There was a man living in the 1700s whose name was Baron von Münchausen. He traveled a lot, and he would tell people stories about the things that would happen to him in his adventures of traveling, and he would exaggerate the stories and make things up, right? For what? For attention, of course. Well, anyway, later on, that name Münchausen was given to people that have a syndrome. They call it Münchausen syndrome, where they will feign sicknesses, right? For either attention or to get out of things. Like, you know, kids that want to get out of going to school. You do that enough and you pretend you're sick and all that, then you end up growing up with this psychological thing called Münchausen syndrome, right? There's a lot of adults that have Münchausen syndrome. I used to work for a guy that he owned the business I worked at, but man, every week he would make up stories every week. He just didn't like he liked the glory of being called a big business owner, but he didn't like the responsibility at all. So he would always make up stories about why he had to go to the doctor and hospital and all this stuff all the time. But then he would make up so many stories, he would forget what the true story was or not. You know, he'd forget, wait, what did I say? So he'd be caught in lies all the time because he made up so much stuff he couldn't remember his stories anymore. Wait, did I go to the doctor for this thing yesterday? Or was that thing? He just made up so many things, right? So that's called Münchausen syndrome, but there's also this thing called Münchausen syndrome by proxy. Now, this is where somebody like a parent will have a child, and they will do, there's a couple different things. They will either make up stories about how sick their child is so that they'll get attention from other people. You poor parent. Oh, it must be so hard having this child that goes through these sicknesses. Or there's the parent that actually causes their child to get sick through medications or poisons, or maybe they injure the child, harm the child, so that that parent can get attention. Or so that the child, you know, the parent's getting attention from other people, or so that the child will give that parent attention. Let me give you an example. Now, I am not the expert as far as studying things like Münchausen syndrome or Münchausen syndrome by proxy or narcissism, but there are many of us that are experts as far as experience goes. Maybe we didn't study certain things, but because these things were parts of our lives, like many of you out there were raised by narcissists. A narcissist parent, narcissist parents, both siblings, or even relationships you've been in, marriages, dating, all that type of situation. You know about narcissism. You know, the narcissist, the person that is so in love with themselves, but not healthy love. It's a toxic love where they don't care about anybody else but themselves. Really, they'll act like they care about other people, but it's always just to get something in return. They give so that they can get back. They apologize only if it means that they're getting themselves out of trouble in some way, maybe with the law or with that person they're in the relationship with, because the person in the relationship is a supplier for them and they don't want to lose that supply. But they don't ever lose the supply because they're always connected to other people for supply. That's why they're very disloyal in relationships. Whether they're cheating on the person or not doesn't matter, because they're always planning on it anyway. But the narcissist will never call it cheating. They will justify everything in their lives that they do. It's a disorder that has to be taken care of only by the root. A pill won't take care of it. Medication won't take care of it. And listen, I know there's a lot of people that are on medications and stuff. I'm not putting that down. I'm just saying a lot of times medication is like surface cleaning, right? instead of getting to the root of the problem. If you've ever done gardening, you know that you can't just cut weeds off on the surface and say, oh, look the weeds are gone from my garden. No, the roots are still in the ground. You got to pull them out by the root. And I always, you know, if you've been watching my channel, I like to get to the root of problems, which I believe is a spiritual thing that's going on, which affects the mental stuff and can even affect the physical stuff. The spiritual realm will affect the mental, and then also it'll manifest in the physical. So I believe in getting to the root of problems, right? So I know a guy. I'm going to share his story. When he was a young boy, he had a mother that was a narcissist. Now, his mother not only was a narcissist, but she also was a hypochondriac. She believed that she had every different type of sickness that you could imagine out there. She had medical books all over her living room floor. She would sleep in her living room all the time on a futon, one of those little portable beds. You would think that there should have been a hospice nurse at the house taking care of her, because she sure did act like she was dying, and she was convincing herself she was dying, and had all these medical books, and was just every different disease and disorder. She had it. And if you ever talked to this woman in your life and talked about something that you were dealing with, maybe you had a battle with cancer or something else, well, not only did she have what you had, but she'll one up you and talk about how she's had it so much worse. You think your life is bad. Well, she'll always one up you, because hers is much, much worse. Her son almost died in a car accident. The door of the car hit her in the head and created a scar. You know, she got wounded, but her son was shattered to pieces, went through a windshield, broke his skull, broke bones all over his skull, his head, everywhere, almost died. But she let him know that she had it much worse than him, and she was the cause of the car accident. Her son almost dies. She gets a little bit of a head wound, but she had it much worse. So, you know, these people, they're not only narcissistic people that can be parents, and they've had it much worse than their very own children. It's amazing that this can happen, that a parent can care so much more about themselves than their children. In fact, this Münchausen syndrome by proxy is something that this now he's a man, but when he was a little boy, this is what he dealt with through his life. But he didn't know. He didn't know he was dealing with narcissism. He didn't know what to call it. And he didn't know that his mother had Münchausen syndrome until he went to therapy, because he had attempted suicide over and over and over again. The suicide didn't work, but he did see therapists, you know, and they, of course, gave him, you know, medications and all that, which eventually they said, you know what, we don't think you need medications. And he agreed, because the medication really wasn't doing anything for him. There was something at the root. That was the problem. The medication, maybe it was doing some surface stuff, but he needed to get to the root of the problem. And one of the things that was pointed out when he was in therapy was that, hey, your mother has something called Münchausen syndrome. Now, he had never heard of Münchausen syndrome, and he really didn't think too much about it at the time. They explained what it is, and he was like, huh. But the one day that he really realized, oh my God, I was raised by somebody with Münchausen syndrome, is the day that he watched this movie called The Sixth Sense. It was made years ago. And there was a little boy in the movie that communicated with the spirits, the ghosts of people that had died. These ghosts would come to him, and he would see them, and he would communicate with them, right? Well, There was a little girl's ghost in this movie that communicated with this little boy. And she had died. And she wanted her story to get out, the truth to come out. Because what had happened with this little girl is she had a mother. The mother was taking care of her little girl, go in the bedroom. The little girl was in bed all the time, sick, constantly sick. So her mother would go in there, feed her soup, get her things to drink, liquids and all that. And the mother got a lot of attention from other people. You poor woman having such a sick child. Oh, you poor woman, you know. And the woman, yeah, poor me. I have such a sick child and I have to take care of her all the time. Well, the woman was poisoning her child little by little, putting poison in the child's food, drink, all that. Little by little, just enough poison to keep that little girl sick. Until one day, the mother had overdone it with the poison, and it killed her little girl. And of course, at the funeral service and the memorial service, oh, the mother's crying and so sad. And guess what? People gave that mother attention. What should have been the worst day of her life was the greatest day of her life, because she was getting so much attention from other people because of the loss of her daughter. So this is Münchausen syndrome by proxy. Now, when this guy that I'm telling you about, when he saw that movie, suddenly, he didn't know why. But when he saw that scene and it was revealed that his mother, or the girl's mother in the movie, was poisoning her, and that's the reason she died, he broke down in tears himself, and it flashed him back to his childhood. And he realized, my God, that's what my mother was doing to me. Because he had remembered that all throughout his childhood, he was constantly sick, constantly sick. And he would cry for his mommy, Mommy! And his mommy would come running to help. And she would say, take this pill. It'll help your tummy. And little did he know, his mommy was giving him pills like Xanax and Ativan. Things that she was addicted to. She never would confess that she was addicted to pills. But this woman had so many pills. She called everybody else in her life alcoholics and drug addicts, quick to judge other people. But she was definitely an addict. But an addict to things that doctors would prescribe. Now, whether she got all these prescriptions from doctors or not, who knows? That's not known. But she sure did have a whole bunch of them. And she popped these pills all the time. And then she gave them to her son. And here's the other thing he remembers. See, he thought mommy was just playing jokes and having fun, because she would laugh after she'd do certain things. Like she would say, here, come here, son, take your vitamin C. And so he'd open his mouth and think he's taking vitamin C, because vitamin C is good for you and you're supposed to take your vitamin C. You don't eat enough fruits and vegetables, so let's get some vitamins in you. Come on, it's good for you. So he'd take this supposed vitamin C, and then minutes later, his body would feel hot. And he'd start turning red all over his body. But not like the solid color red. He'd get blotchy red all over, and he felt like he was burning up, and he was itching so bad, and he was just a little boy. And his mother would start giggling, because what she did was she gave him something called niacin. Now, maybe you're unfamiliar with niacin. Some of you are familiar with niacin. You know the effects of it. It opens up your capillaries, makes you get flushed with all this blood that just rushes throughout your body. And for a child, for this boy, it was very scary. It felt worse than a sunburn. If you've ever had a severe sunburn before, it feels kind of like that. So while mommy's laughing at him, he's crying because he thinks he's dying of something and he's actually suffering. But she got her kicks out of it. And she thought she was just a little practical joker. Hey, it's just silly stuff. Ha ha ha, fun, fun, fun. This boy ends up growing up, moving out on his own, and eventually he's in his 20s and he gets married at 24 years old. And during this marriage in his mid-20s, he brings his wife over to his parents' house. And his mother makes dinner for them. And she serves him food. And as he's eating, he starts to feel weird. And he tells his wife, man, there's something going on. He says, I feel exactly like I did when I was a child. When my mom would give me food. Or her vitamins that she gave me for my stomach. And she's like, what? And he's like, I think my mom drugs me. So his wife, she was getting up and went into the kitchen of this guy's mother's house. And she just so happened to see a bottle of prescription pills sitting on the counter next to the food that his mother was serving. And where she was serving this food, this man's wife saw 5 empty small capsules. You know, like if you open a capsule and you pour the powder out, there were 5 of them and they were empty. 5 empty ones laying on the counter. And she looks at the prescription bottle and it says Ativan on it. Ativan. Ativan is a very strong medication for people that have anxiety. It's like instant dope, you know, you just, you know, calms people down, maybe makes you feel stoned, maybe makes you feel drunk if you could, you know, compare it to anything else. He felt like he was stoned, he felt like he was drunk. His mother had emptied 5 of these capsules into his food, and the man's wife didn't know. The young man's wife, you know, he's in his mid-20s. She didn't know what Ativan was. So she actually writes down Ativan and writes down the milligrams of it. And she worked for an oral surgeon at the time. So she goes to work the next day and asks the oral surgeon if he knows what this stuff is. This was years ago, you guys. This is like 25 years ago that this happened. So it's not like she typed it online and was looking, you know, what is this? She didn't really know how to do that stuff. So the oral surgeon that she worked for says, that is a very, very strong anxiety medication. And if his mother was giving him that much, he's lucky he's alive. Some people could die from that. His mom got kicks out of watching him feeling drunk and stoned and so bad, where he didn't have alcohol that night, but he had to have his wife drive home. Honey, you're going to have to drive home. I don't feel right. Right? So she drove home. And then he was talking to his wife, he was just like, yeah, my mom, she used to give me, told her about all the stuff she used to give him as a child. And when he was a child and she gave him tummy pills, well, those tummy pills made his head spin and made him throw up. And he would throw up all the time and have to be taken to the doctors because he's puking his guts out. And back then, it's not like doctors say, let's do some blood work and see if this kid's been drugged or poisoned or anything. So his mommy got a lot of attention. See, this boy, when he was younger, his mommy was a monster to him because she had done some very, very, besides drugging him and all that, he had witnessed her doing some terrible, the most worst things imaginable. And the biggest monster that ever existed in his life was his mom. And to this day, if you were to ask him, what was the greatest monster? What was the biggest monster in your entire life, if you could say that? And he'd say it was definitely my mother, all the way to this day. He's forgiven, but that doesn't mean he believes it's okay. He's forgiven, because to forgive means to forfeit and give up. It's two words: forfeit and give up that thing that you're holding on to, that's maybe haunting you or hurting you, and it's eating you up inside and you're letting it get to you. He let it go. But that doesn't mean that his mother's welcome in his life to come cause more destruction. Doesn't mean that he's going to keep on associating with his mother so she can keep on doing these things, because that's just who she is, right? Everybody else has problems in the world except for her, right? But when she has problems, well, it's because she's dying of everything. Because you got to remember, not only is this guy's mother a narcissist, she's also a hypochondriac, believing she's got everything out there, that you know, diseases and all these different things that are killing her. And if you have anything, well, she's got it much worse than you. But then also this mother had something called Münchausen syndrome by proxy. This guy was telling his wife how when he was young, his mom would give him pills that would make him suddenly, he had to pee all the time, constantly. Well, she gave him diuretics because she thought it was funny to watch him run to the bathroom back and forth and back and forth. She got her kicks off of watching her very son suffer and call for his mommy. Mommy, I need your help. Because since mommy was a monster to him, he didn't really want mommy's help. But because he's suffering, you know, he was very distant from his mommy. He didn't have that relationship where mommy and him, there was anything kind of loving relationship at all. He was scared of his mommy. She was a monster. But, you know, daddy was never around. Daddy was always at work. So mommy's home. So he'd stay home from school all the time, missed a bunch of school, spent a lot of his life in the doctors, at the hospital, all kinds of stuff, this guy, right? Now, he's telling his wife these things, and she was pretty shocked. How could a mother do this to their children? And he just, you know, no big deal, you know, she's a clown. She kind of thinks this kind of stuff is funny. That's just who she is. But his wife was like, no, this is pretty serious. And he still didn't take it very serious, and he didn't try to get revenge or anything like that. But he realized, wow, my mother certainly was quite a bigger monster than he could even imagine. Now, the day came where this movie, The Sixth Sense, came out, and he was watching it, and something just happened to him when he saw the ghost of this little girl speaking to this boy and communicated to this boy what had been done to her. In fact, in the movie, she had set up a hidden camera. This little girl, smart, set up a hidden camera so that she could record what her mother was doing. Either it was a hidden camera, or a recorder that recorded the things that her mom was saying, but they were showing it on the movie. They were showing the mother feeding this little girl poison. So it was the little girl, she was aware something was going on and got suspicious of her mother. Just like this little boy, something deep down in him remembered that these tummy pills, these pills for his tummy that his mommy was giving him, well, they seemed not to work because he would take them and then things would get much, much, much worse. Threw up almost every day of his life, throwing up, throwing up, throwing up. One day, this little boy's appendix bursted. Now, whether that was due to something that his mother was doing to him or not, he wasn't quite sure. And still to this day, he's not sure. But he had to get rushed to the hospital because his appendix bursted and he was about to die. Right? So when he sees this movie called The Sixth Sense, and he sees this happen, and he sees the mother get exposed, and she got exposed in the movie, that's when he broke down and started crying. Didn't plan on crying in the movie, but for some reason, that affected him. And it made him flash back and realize, what? And then he remembered when he was in therapy for his suicide attempts. He remembered one of the therapists telling him, your mother had Münchausen syndrome. And now he's seeing this thing, this Münchausen syndrome by proxy. And he's realizing, my God, that's me. My mother was getting attention, keeping me sick. It made her feel good because she got attention, not only from other people, you poor woman with such a sick child, but from her child, who was very distant from his mother. But then he needed his mommy because he was sick, and mommy was there to take care of him and give him the medications that he needed. The reason I'm sharing this story with you, you guys, is because there are people that are dealing with these things, and they go to therapists, they take medications, they grow up and wonder what's wrong with them, right? Maybe the therapists, you know, they listen, they give you pills, but, you know, the pills aren't working. Sometimes these people, they ask, you know, pastors or religious leaders, people of men of God, women of God, and the men of God or the women of God, they tell them sometimes, you know, you just got to get over it. Don't you got Jesus in your life? If you got Jesus in your life, he freed you of all these things. What's wrong with you? Grow up, get over it, let it go, forgive and forget, move on. And they do, they try their best. Okay, I got to move on. You know, God forgave me. I need to forgive others. I need to let this go. But there's still something in there they're battling with. And the other people, they just brush it off like, you know, you got God in your life now. Move on. Come on, grow up. But there's so many people that are suffering. And, you know, like me, I don't have the answers for everybody, but I have a lot of experience with certain things that I've been talking about. Trust me. Trust me. I'm very familiar with that guy I was just sharing the story with you. I want to, I'm going to get going, but I want to close something up here. I want to tell you that boy's growing a lot. And that man's still growing. And because of what he's gone through, that man's hoping to be able to help others as well. Because sometimes it takes somebody that knows what suffering is all about to be able to be empathetic to other people and to actually help other people. Maybe people don't, maybe he doesn't have the answers to everybody's, you know, what they need and what they should do. But he knows one thing. See, this young man was raised in a very religious environment. God, God, God. It was all God, 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 and the religion and the religion and the religion, and throwing Bible verses down your throat. And you gotta believe these Bible verses the way that our religious leaders teach these Bible verses and interpret it and all that. And so, you know, he had all that stuff, but it wasn't doing nothing for him in his life except for condemning him even more and more and more. And he got so sick of it. Then one day, instead of religion, he started doing a thing called relationship. And wanted to know if there really was a God. What's your name? Who are you? And what happened to him is Christ came into his life. He asked and he received. And that's his story. So now what he does, and what I want to share with you, because I see it this way. The man I'm sharing with you sees it this way. There is a root to these types of, if you want to call them disorders, mental sicknesses, and these are serious things. Hey, listen, I'm not trying to say if somebody is battling with Munchausen's or something like that, like they didn't have any problems in their life that were rooted from their childhoods either, because that's most likely that's what has happened to them. But instead of growing and learning and training themselves, they just take the sins of their fathers and mothers and they repeat them on everybody else. Let's just keep this thing going, right? Just repeat the cycle of my mother and my father. Well, instead of repeating the cycle, it's time to break this thing and pull it out by the root and start getting to the root of it. Now, let me show you something from this book called the Bible. It's in the book of Psalms. It's chapter 106, 106. It talks about these people. These people call themselves the people of God. Very religious people, right? Knowing about God, raising their children, teaching their children about God, and this is the way we do things in this religion. This is the way we believe and do things, and this is... But what were they doing? It says in verse 37 of Psalms 106, they sacrificed their sons and their daughters to the demons. Demons. Demonic spirits of darkness. They sacrificed their very own children to demons. Now, did they go up to a demon? Did they see a demon manifest and say, here you go? Or perhaps were they doing things to their children that were entertaining the demons? Opening up doorways, portals, if you will, inviting this demonic energy in. Oh, you hate your children? Well, I hate God's children too. So what does demonic energy do? It gets into these parents, manipulates these people's minds, and causes these people to do this evil stuff to their children, right? That's how these parents are sacrificing their children to demons. People allow demonic energy in, even if they don't believe in demonic energy. You might not even believe in this stuff. But let me tell you, in the Bible, it says the real fight isn't necessarily against humans. The fight that we have is against spiritual wicked forces of darkness. You might not see them with your eyes, although they can manifest, right? Like some of them are called familiar spirits. Like myself, I don't believe that the ghosts of children and human beings show up and guide you in life. I think those are called familiar spirits. You know, different than that movie, The Sixth Sense. I think familiar spirits come in so that you'll invite them in. Oh, you look like family. That's where familiar comes from. It's a spirit family. Come on in. I invite you in. And then these things get in your life and you just opened up a doorway of disaster, right? And these spirits, they not only want to get into other people, but they want to manipulate those as well. They want to manipulate people. And they'll manipulate people so far to where people start inviting them into their lives without even knowing that they're inviting them in their lives. And the more they start to toy with things, see, it starts with small things. Maybe these people, when they're little children, they start making up excuses. They don't want to go to school. I'm sick. So they make up that they're sick all the time. And it gets them out of going to school, right? Münchausen syndrome. Hey, if I just pretend I'm sick. Well, now you got sickness on your mind all the time. You're speaking sickness. And these things, they love to hear that word because it's part of what they do. So now they're coming into that realm. Demons messed with children, you guys. It's in the Bible. Demons messed with children and got into children. Jesus would go and set children free of demons, these demonic entities. So, you know, it can even happen at a young age. You start talking sickness, and at first it seems so fun because you're getting out of school, but before you know it, you become an adult. Now you got this root in you, and then now what happens when there's a root? Eventually branches grow, leaves grow, and then there's fruit. And the fruit of the life of this adult, they're still doing the same thing. Maybe, hey, if I tell everybody I'm sick and then I get out of going to work, I get out of this, I get out of that, it gives me attention, and hey, maybe I'll take it to the next level. I'm going to have kids, and then when this person has children, they start doing what? They start I'll pretend my child's sick. Oh, you know what's better yet? Let's get my child sick. If I get my child sick, that'll give me even more attention. Do you see, you guys? So, I'm not the mental expert. I'm not the therapist, the psychologist, but I do have a lot of experience in life with these things. And I know what's worked for people like me. And I know what's worked for that guy I told you the story about, whose mother did those terrible things. The answer for people like him was getting to the root of the problem, that spiritual thing. And when he invited Christ into his life, because Christ loves you, Christ wants in, not to put a bunch of religious stuff on you and abuse you. No, he wants to set you free. He loves you. You're his children. And he wants to come in and protect you and guide you and set you free and help you to set others free as well. That was his answer. Pills didn't work. Therapy, you know, they tried their best, but it really didn't work in the long run. It didn't get to the root, and the root was a spiritual thing. I'm telling you guys, I believe this stuff, narcissism, Münchausen syndrome, Münchausen's by proxy, I believe it's all spiritual. Even that hypochondriac stuff. These ideas are getting in people's heads, thinking they're dying of all this stuff. Why? Don't you think that there could be some kind of spirit behind it that's whispering, you're dying of this, you're dying of that. It's yeah. That's why on this channel, I like to get to the root of it, you guys. And then once we start taking care of that root and getting that root out, we can plant some new seeds in you. And it's all about getting you to know who you truly are. Get rid of this false identity and all this past stuff that was just a nightmare in your life. Start planting new seeds and start figuring out the real truth about you, the wholesome truth, how Yeshua, Jesus, sees you, the one that loves you, so that you can start seeing yourself the way that he sees you, not the way that religion tells you he sees you, because they'll condemn you, but the truth about how he sees you, so you can see yourself that way and you can start healing and healing right. All right, you guys, I love you. I hope this message has blessed you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.